Hey YouTube, Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Naturia Runick Yugioh deck profile for post the June 2023 ban list. We got a couple cards hit for the Naturia Runick deck. Naturia Sacred Tree is now at 1. I never thought I'd ever see a Naturia card be put on the ban list, but Sacred Tree was a very good trap card that just allowed for search power when sent to the graveyard, so it's been put to 1. And Runick Fountain also at 2. Not the biggest hit with Fountain, since 2 was the norm I saw played for a good number of, Runick lineups for the deck, but we still have the full power of the rest of the Runick engine and the Naturia lineup, so I figured an update was due, and I've actually never done a Naturia Runick deck on the channel before. I've always either done Runick or Naturia, and also with the lineup, I'm definitely happy with the playstyle of the deck being brought together for both to be used. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off for the main deck. Our Naturia lineup consists of 3 Naturia Camellia. This is one of the best cards to just set up your Naturia Sacred Tree. When it's normal or special summon, you can send one Naturia card from your deck to the graveyard. And if you would tribute a monster to activate a Naturia monster effect, you can send the top 2 cards of your deck to the graveyard instead. And if your opponent normal special summons a monster, except during a damage step, you can special summon one Naturia monster from your graveyard. So you have your setup being able to send your now 1 copy of Sacred Tree to the graveyard to get the additional search with Camellia to either add another Naturia card, like let's say Mole Cricket, or even your go-to spell, which is still very important in the deck, which is your Naturia Blessing, being a special summon card for your Naturia monsters. So then 3 Camellia along with 3 of your Naturia Mole Cricket, with this card being a special summon option as well. When it's during the main phase quick effect, you can tribute the card to special summon 1 Naturia monster from your deck, or you can special summon 2 if your opponent controls a monster with the highest attack on the field. And if your opponent special summons a monster from the X deck, or you special summon a Naturia monster from the X deck while this card's in the graveyard, you can special summon Mole Cricket onto the field. So you can tribute Mole Cricket to go into Camellia, setting up the Mole Cricket in the graveyard for you to then send the Sacred Tree off Camellia, searching out a Blessing for you then to special summon the Mole Cricket back onto the field, giving you your level 5 synchro play to summon out your Naturia Beast onto the field. And then for the last of the Naturia monsters that we run in the deck, 1 copy of Naturia Sunflower, just being able to tribute this card and 1 other Naturia monster to negate the activation of an effect monster your opponent controls and destroy it. So if you have Camellia on the field along with Sunflower, you can use the mill 2 of Camellia to use Sunflower without having to tribute, and then use your Sunflower a second time, this time actually tributing the Camellia, to then have 2 monster negates thanks to your Sunflower setup. It could just be another monster special summoned off of Mole Cricket as well, and if your opponent controls the highest attack point monster, getting 2 monsters, you can summon out your Camellia and your Sunflower off of 1 Mole Cricket. I also run a small Ishizu package with the 1 Kelbeck, the 1 Keldo, and the 1 Agito, more for the mill setup. I thought of running Medora. If you were to do so, you can switch out maybe the Agito for the copy of Medora. It's more for the shuffle back power, but then you have Agito and Kelbeck for the mill power. That provides more of the graveyard setup, whether it be for your Naturia cards. You're not hitting the Sacred Tree consistently as much anymore, but you still can use cards like Keldo to shuffle them back into the deck, the 1 copy of the Sacred Tree to at least then reuse again off of another Camellia. And then lastly, for the rest of the main deck monsters, 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, just my hand trap of choice for stopping my opponent's graveyard setups or any searches they may try to utilize, along with 2 Droll and Lockbird. If you want to run a 3rd copy of this card, you can try and mix around some of the other spell lineup that I run in the deck, or even reduce a number from the Ishizu lineup as well to 2 copies of 2 cards there for a 3rd copy of Droll in the deck. But that is it for the main deck monsters, but the good majority of cards that rely on special summoning out monsters comes in the form of the spell lineup for our Runick cards. Starting off, we have the 2 Runick Fountain. Once again, I only usually ran 2 of this card. I know it was put to 2 on the ban list. You can activate Runick quick play spells from your hand during your opponent's turn, once per turn. If you activate a Runick quick play spell, you can target up to 3 Runick quick play spells in your graveyard, place them on the bottom of the deck in any order, and then draw the same number of cards. So Runick Fountain helps to replenish your draw power when you invest in your Runick cards, and the Runick cards have you skip your next battle phase, so this setup can at least prepare you to have the long haul against your opponent with either using your Runick cards to get out more monsters on the field or destroy your opponent's own resources and banish the top cards of their decks. Additionally, Runick Fountain is just that extra bonus, being able to also have you set up your own Runick quick play spells by activating them from your hand during your opponent's turn, and your fountain can easily be searched with cards like Yugioh the Runick Wings by discarding another card. I also run the 3 copies of Runick Tip. It's your searcher in the deck, just adding a Runick card, so you could potentially add Fountain off of this card as well. But this card also gives you a Banish, but also the other effect for your Runick cards is to special summon a Runick monster from your extra deck to the extra monster zone, so this can give you access to your Yugioh, but most of the time I'll just get the search I needed for Fountain off of Tip to begin with, as long as I have other Runick spells to use in the deck also. You can use those searchers for any of the other ones you may need, like Runick Destruction. Once again, the Runick cards also have a Banish when you use their non-special summon monster effect. With Runick Destruction, you can target a spell or trap your opponent controls, destroy it, then you banish the top 4 cards of their deck. The Banish 4 can definitely potentially take away some of their needed essentials for any of their engine in their deck. And you also have the special summon play off of Destruction, and also 3 copies of Freezing Curses. Targeting an effect monster your opponent controls, negate its effects until the end of this turn, then banish the top 3 cards of your deck. So if you're going first, Destruction and Freezing Curses will just be used for the special summon play, with Flashing Fire being our next 3 of in the deck. You target 1 special summon monster your opponent controls, destroy it, then banish the top 2 of their deck. Once again, another card that you'll mostly just use for the extra deck summon if you go first, and also 3 copies of Runick Slumber. Slumber helps because it helps to give you your recycle power, being able to activate this card the same turn. Let's say you use one of your other ones to special summon out your Runick monster onto the field. So you use that first one of the 3 ofs that I mentioned to special summon out Yugioh. Use Yugion's discard. You could potentially discard another Runick card that wouldn't do anything if you go first against your opponent. Having 2 set up in the graveyard, then you get your search for your Runick Fountain. And then from there, you can activate Runick Slumber and target your Yugioh on the field. Then you can resolve the Fountain, shuffling back the 3 Runick quick play spells in your graveyard and drawing 3 additional cards while having your Yugioh still face up on the field. And for some of the lower numbers for the Runick spells, the 1 copy of Runick Dispelling and the 1 Runick Smiting Storm. Additional numbers to run, giving you a banish of your opponent's cards, and then also a discard if your opponent adds cards from their deck to their hand. They're 1-ofs just because they don't come up as much, but still good options to have for different cards to search and activate. For the other spells in the deck, 3 copies of Naturia Blessing, the special summon card for your other Naturias, a great search off of the 1 Sacred Tree now as well. So that's the biggest weakness, just having less access to this card now in the deck, sadly, but still can be fully utilized because it's also not a once per turn, just to get a Naturia resource back onto the field. And lastly for the spells, also 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent, because the biggest weakness is your opponent will potentially try to hand trap your Yugioh. So if they do something like that, and it's a monster effect like Ash Blossom or Effect Veiler, you can at least then activate Triple Tactics Talent to either take away a resource from their hand or, give you the draw 2 to potentially draw into more Runick cards for you to at least revitalize your play for the Fountain setup. And then lastly for the traps, just the 1 copy, sadly now, of Sacred Tree. I may end up doing a Naturia update for a pure Naturia deck as well later down the road, because 1 tree definitely does affect the whole playstyle setup of the Naturia deck as well. And we mostly just use this card for the fact of when it's sent to the graveyard to add a Naturia card. We do have the Ishizu option to at least recycle the card back in to reuse again with Camellia when that setup can happen. But once again, a little more or less consistent now, since we also just have the 1-ofs for the Ishizu monsters also. Moving on now to the extra deck, I run 2 copies of Yugioh, the Runick Wings. It's your field spell searcher. When it's special summon from the extra deck, you can discard 1 card to add 1 Runick field spell from your deck to your hand. So this is the one scenario also, if you do end up drawing into the 1-of Sacred Tree, you can at least discard this off of Yugioh, have your Naturia search there, and then be able to add your field spell as well off of this card. We also run the 2 Gary, the Runick Fangs, being an additional level 4 monster to go into some rank 4 Xyz plays, but also having an option when it's destroyed by battle to target 1 card on the field and destroy it. And when it's special summon, you can target 1 non-quick play Runick spell in your graveyard and add to your hand, being able to recycle the field spell if your opponent does destroy it back from your graveyard to your hand. And then also 1 copy of Munin, the Runick Wings. For this card, when it's special summon from the extra deck, discarding 1 card to add 1 Runick continuous spell from your deck to your hand. You mostly use this as an additional fusion option to special summon out, and banishing this card to negate the activation of a card that would control that targets a Runick card, protecting our Fountain while this card is set up from the graveyard and destroying that card. And then for the synchro monsters, 1 copy of Naturia Beast and 1 copy of Naturia Barkion. For the additional synchro plays, we can go into Barkion with using our Sunflower and Camellia, being able to stop our opponent's traps. Beast, just stopping spells in general, can shut down a good majority of what our opponent may have. And also 1 copy of Coral Dragon, 1 copy of Stardust Charge Warrior, both relying on helping to summon out our draw power, as well as going into Baron de Fleur, which we run the 1 of, and the 1 Sword Soul Supreme Sovereign Shen Ying for another boss level 10 monster added to the banish power of this card, getting to destroy an additional card of our opponents, and also boosting the attack of our monsters that our opponent control, losing 100 attack and defense for each banished card. For our Xyz monsters, 1 copy of Exciton Knight, 1 copy of number 60, and the 1 Baguska. A good lineup of generic Xyz to rely on depending on if we need draw power, board clearing, and then just stalling out for drawing into the cards we need. With our only Link monster being Donner Dagger for Hire, we only have 1 Arise Heart to worry about now with the Kashtira lineup, so Donner is still a good tribute option to at least get over that 1 monster. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, our biggest lineup still revolves around the setup with Sacred Tree, but if you just have your, let's say you have your Runic Tip in your hand for your search power, and let's say you have 1, make sure you have a 2-card play to rely on at least with both of these cards. You can summon out the Mole Cricket, tributing it to then summon out from our deck to the field the Naturia Camellia. The Camellia, as long as you can open up the Sacred Tree in your hand, you can send the additional Sacred Tree to the graveyard. If this play, if let's say the Sacred Tree is in your hand, you can either send the Sacred Tree, if not, you can use the Camellia to send the Sunflower to the graveyard, and then you can keep the Camellia on the field, because then if your opponent summons out a monster, you can use the Camellia to special summon back the Sunflower into the field, and then have the true tribute play off of the Camellia also. But let's say that this didn't happen, you have the Sacred Tree to send, so you'll send the Sacred Tree, and then you will add off of the search for it, the spell being your Naturia Blessing. You can then activate Blessing to summon back the Mole Cricket to the field, going for the Synchro 5 play using these 2 monsters, summoning out your Naturia Beast, and then you can use your Mole Cricket from the graveyard to summon back onto the field, having the Spell Negator, and then on top of that you can activate your Runic Tip, giving you the additional summon of a monster from the extra deck. So then you can go for your Hugin, having the search power for your discard, depending on what random card you discard from your hand. If it's a Runic spell, all the better. Sending it to the graveyard, getting your field spell search. And then what this play comes down to next is whether or not you have an additional Runic card in your hand. If you have one that you can activate and resolve for your play, you can activate Runic Slumber, then targeting your Hugin on the field, then using Fountain to shuffle back the 3 Runic cards, getting an additional draw 3 thanks to this. And then for the following turn, if your opponent summons a monster, they'll try most likely get around the Naturia Beast for you to have them be able to activate spells again. You can tribute your Mole Cricket once they summon out that bigger monster, and then from the deck you can summon out the Camellia and the Sunflower, and then the play will either come by to, do they want to swing over the Beast, or do they want to at least attempt to get over the Camellia and the Sunflower? Because once they get over the Beast, they can, yes, activate spell cards, but then they'll be at the mercy of a 2 monster negate. One of the other plays, if you just stick to the Camellia on the field for the summon, let's say you go for the Camellia play on the field, and you use the search once again. So with this play, you'll have Naturia Camellia in your hand, and then the 2 additional Runic cards. If you get Tip, all the better, but you can also just have the Slumber, or even just 1 other Runic card in your hand for the activation. But having Slumber, or at least one that's usable like this, is the best play to go. You'll activate your summon your Camellia, then use the effect, sending the Sacred Tree to the graveyard, then getting the search off of the Sacred Tree, so you can add the Blessing to your hand, and you'll hold on to that. You will then activate the Freezing Curses to summon out the Hugin to the field as well, and then your Hugin will activate. So you have the Freezing Curses as your special summon. You just need the 1 additional card in your hand, so saving this Runic card. So the other random card could be any discard. I don't recommend discarding a hand trap, but you can do it for the Hugin search to then get your field spell and activate it on the field. And then from there, you can activate your Runic Slumber to have the additional play of being able to target your Hugin, and then you can use the Fountain. It will just be a 2 shuffle back, but you'll still get a draw 2 power off of this card. And then you can go for a Synchro 6 using these monsters. You can go for the Stardust Charge Warrior. So on top of the draw 2, 2 that you got from Fountain, you'll get the additional draw off of the Stardust Charge Warrior. You can then activate the Naturia Blessing, summoning back the Camellia to the field, and then using the Camellia with the Stardust Charge Warrior to then go into your level 10 synchro of your Baron de Fleur. You'll have the Fountain ready to go, so if any of the other cards that you drew off of the draw 3 is an additional runic card, depending on which one it may be, you can either stop one of your opponent's cards. If it's just one of those cards and the other one is a potential other draw, like your Naturia Blessing or another hand trap, then you have a Baron de Fleur on the field to protect your Fountain and more graveyard setup to use on the following turn, depending on what you draw. So that is it for the deck profile. Once again, we had a few hits for the deck, but I'd say the deck is still playable, just with having to work with one Sacred Tree for our Naturia engine. And as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.